Good morning once again, everyone. Welcome to Applied Economics. We are not our week 9, and for week 9, our topic is about theory of production. So, at the end of the lesson, for week 9, we will be explaining the concept of market. We will also describe different market structures and its roles in giving fair market price. Give examples also of products existing under different market structures and also perform computations for profit and total revenue under each market structure. So let's proceed to our discussion. So market. So what is a market in economics? Market refers to the place where the consumers and the producers buy and sell products at an agreed price. So also, market structure. This refers to the degree of competition in the market for a particular product or service. For market structure, we have two elements. So we have the number of buyers and sellers and also the nature of product. For the number of buyers and sellers, this determines the degree of competition. So more buyer and sellers means more competition. Also, for the nature of product, the extent to which the product is standardized. For the nature of product, we have two nature of product. We have the identical and the differentiated product. For the identical, these are goods that are homogeneous, almost the same in features and uses. These type of products command uh, higher degree of competition. Meanwhile, for differentiated products, these are goods that are heterogeneous. No exact product exists in the market and it differs in features and has almost no close substitutes. Producers enjoy a certain degree of control over price and quantity of product. So once again, for identical product, these are homogeneous. And for differentiated products, these are heterogeneous. So we also have types of market. So we have the perfect competition and imperfect competition. So under imperfect competition, we have the monopolistic competition, oligopoly, and monopoly. For imperfect competition, of course, under a perfect competition and imperfect competition, we have the types of production, price, number of buyers and sellers, monopoly, and competition. So for perfect competition, let's first discuss it. So these are the types of market. In your handouts or PDF files, you may see a diagram or a figure that shows the types of market. So for perfect competitions, these are the assumptions. So we have the large number of buyer and seller. So for perfect competition, each buyer and seller is so small that he cannot exert any influence on price in the market. Also, each buyer is so insignificant that he cannot specialize privilege from the seller. And also, each seller produces a small volume that he cannot dictate price, a price taker of what the market dictates as per demand and supply of the commodity. The individual seller accepts the price and he decides on how many he would like to sell. The demand curve is perfectly elastic. So those are the assumptions for perfect competition. We also have the homogeneous product. So once again, for perfect competition, these products are identical. There are abounds close substitute for good, giving the consumers a choice of one brand he would purchase. And also for perfect competition, we have free mobility of resources, and a business under this market condition can move in and out of the market at any time in response to price changes. This implies the following condition. So what are the conditions? We have three conditions. The first condition is labor must be mobile geographically and occupationally. Our second condition, our inputs are not owned by an owner. And our third condition is any firm who would like to join the market could do so, or if he decides to leave, he is free to do so. And another assumption for perfect competition is, of course, our perfect knowledge. So, for perfect knowledge, the sellers and the buyers have a complete knowledge of what is ongoing price in a various price of the market. They should know what are the costs of production and its prices to gain the most profitable rate of the product. Future price should also be considered in order to attain a thorough knowledge in pricing the commodity. So let's have the analysis of revenue under perfect competition. So in week 8, we have discussed how to compute the total revenue. So here, let's analyze the revenue under perfect competition. So we have here our TRO, total revenue, is the sum of money received after selling the product and the price being constant. So total revenue varies directly with output level. The more product it produces, the more revenue is obtained. Of course, total revenue is um, product multiplied by the quantity. For our average revenue, it is the price of the product. So we have here AR means average revenue. And how do we compute for our average revenue? So we'll just have to divide our total revenue to our quantity. For marginal revenue, it is the additional revenue added to our total revenue or TR by obtaining added unit of the firm's output. So in order for us to get our marginal revenue, just add our additional revenue to our total revenue. So AR is equals to additional revenue, or it means additional revenue, and to our price of product. So as we could see in our table below, or table shown in our presentation or in your handouts or PDF file, we have here our market price, the units sold, and our total revenue. So again, how do we get the total revenue? So it is by multiplying our price and our quantity. So let's see our first row we have here. For market price, it is equals to 10, and for units sold, it is equals to 10. If you multiply 10 by 10, so 10 multiplied by 10 is equals to 100. So 100 is our total revenue. In order for us to get our marginal revenue, we have to it is the additional revenue added to our total revenue by obtaining added unit of the firm's output. So we have here is equals to 10, and for our average revenue AR, so that is the price of product. Let's have here a perfect competition example. So for perfect competition example, we have basic needs like food, rice, sugar, eggs, and chicken and meat, fish, clothing, unbranded t-shirt, pants, and socks. There is no need to advertise or promote because they are all, of course, basic needs. Note that basic food, especially the agricultural products sold in the market, are being regulated by the Philippine government by having price ceiling and price floor to secure the welfare of the people. So that is for our perfect competition. Next is our imperfect competition. And for imperfect competition, we have some assumptions. So assumptions as to type of products. So they are not the same, differentiated in features to gives the same satisfaction. So example, we have bath soap and toothpaste. Another assumption is as to price. So they have influence in the price decision. Oligopoly has control over the prices since it establishes cartel to protect the members for the pricing system and for proper distribution of products in the market. So examples for us to price in our imperfect competition is gasoline stations, cell phone industries. Also, for Another assumption for imperfect competition is as the number of buyers and sellers. So only the monopoly market structure under imperfect competition enjoys the sole seller of the product with no close substitutes. So oligopoly has few sellers, say hundreds. Example for this one, for imperfect competition, we have appliances, cars, and computers. Monopolistic competition has large number of sellers, say thousands. So for example, we have hamburger chain restaurants. So it's because these are food industry. And another assumption is to ask the competition. So for this one, both monopolistic competition and oligopoly need an extensive advertisement. Only the monopoly does not need any promotion. Example of as to competition products are soft drinks, juices, and beverages. And another assumption for imperfect competition is to as to mobility. So the entry and exit in the market is not that easy, especially in the monopoly. So example again is appliance, car, and computer. So these are the assumptions for imperfect competition. Now let's go to monopoly. So monopoly is a sole producer and has no close substitute. Since there are no rivals, it can push through on whatever price the producer wants the public to take. He can even fix the price and determine his own price policy and leave the consumer's decision as to how many would they take given the price of the product. So it is not that easy to enter the monopoly industry because of the following. So because of barrier entry. So barrier to entry is the hindrances in moving in the market. So what are these? We have the economic in nature. In some industries, consumers are best served by a single firm and are not profitable for some other firms to enter the field of monopolies. Imagine that the technology used in the production of energy, so the technical know-how and the capital outlay in producing electricity is so heavy. Small producer could not enjoy economies of scale. Another barrier to entry is institutional or artificial barriers. These are exclusive ownership, patent rights and copyrights, market franchise, cutthroat competition. So for cutthroat competition, we have two types. We have the simple monopolies and discriminating monopolies. Cutthroat competition is price cutting. So for simple monopolies, these are charges the same price to all customers for the same commodity. So example, kilowatt use and discriminating monopolies. So it charges different prices to different customers for the same commodity. So example, airtime for domestic and overseas. So we will analyze the revenue under monopoly So we have here the average revenue curve is demand curve because it shows the relationship between price and quantity consumed. The monopolist demand curve is sloping downward. For his commodity to be sold, he has to lower his price. Since he has to sell an extra unit, MR is less than our average revenue. And MR curve is below average revenue, downward sloping. And is twice as steep. So MR is our market revenue. So we have here our and also as the unit sold are increasing, so we could see there's an increase in units sold, but our TR is also increasing, but our MR is decreasing. So you can see here in our second column, units sold is increasing, our total revenue is increasing, but our MR is decreasing. So as we increase our outputs, you also increase total cost. So if total cost is lower than market price, profits are still attainable even if you lower the price at its original. When TC is already higher than market price, it is the beginning of high profit. TR falls as quantity increases because of decrease in price. To maximize profit, monopoly should increase revenue, reduce cost of output, and total cost should be higher than market price. So to furthermore understand our week 9 lesson, let us watch a video discussion regarding about theory of production.
Noble Review, macroeconomics and microeconomics, for use with introductory college macro and micro courses, as well as the AP macro and micro exams. Today we're going to go over everything that you need to know about monopolies. A monopoly exists when there's only one firm selling a unique product. So the firm is the price maker, not a price taker. Compared to a perfectly competitive market structure, a monopoly is highly inefficient because the prices are going to be higher and the output is going to be lower. Economic profits can be high in the long run for the monopolist, as there are very high barriers to entry. A monopolist is going to enjoy economies of scale over a large range of output, making it nearly impossible to compete against this massive firm. An example of a monopoly would be the utilities, like electricity. To illustrate unregulated monopoly with an economic profit, the price as represented by the demand or average revenue curve must exceed the average total cost curve at the MR equals MC level of output. Demand is downward sloping for the monopolist since it represents the entire industry's demand. The marginal revenue curve is also downward sloping, but that sits below the demand curve. The monopolist will produce in the elastic region of its demand curve. In this region, marginal revenue is greater than zero. This graph shows the area of economic profit. This next graph shows the area of total revenue at the profit maximizing level of output. And in this graph, we see the area of total economic costs. To graph a monopoly taking an economic loss, the price must be less than the average total cost curve at the MR equals MC level of output. In this example, total costs exceed the firm's total revenue. A profit maximizing monopolist is inefficient compared to a perfectly competitive market because the monopolist charges a higher price and produces less output. The term for inefficiency in economics is deadweight loss. Since the monopolist charges a price greater than its marginal cost, there is no allocative efficiency. Society loses the area between the perfectly competitive output level, D equals MC, and the monopolist's output. Also, the monopolist does not experience productive efficiency because the ATC curve is not at its minimum point at the profit maximizing level of output. Because of the higher monopoly price, the area of consumer surplus is less than a perfectly competitive market's consumer surplus. Part of the original consumer surplus under a perfectly competitive market will be transferred to the producer. The rest becomes part of the deadweight loss. In the next graph, you can compare the monopoly price and output to the perfectly competitive price and output. The perfectly competitive consumer surplus is the area under the demand curve and above the PC. The consumer surplus under monopoly is the shaded triangle. Socially optimal regulation. If a monopolist were regulated to produce at the socially optimal level of output, it would produce where the price, or demand, intersects the marginal cost curve, P equals MC. At this level of output, allocative efficiency is achieved and there is no deadweight loss. This point will maximize the sum of consumer and producer surplus. The graph shows the socially optimal price, PSO, and quantity, QSO. Fair return regulation. If a monopoly is regulated to break even and take in zero economic profit or a normal profit, it will produce at a level of output where price equals average total cost. That is P equals D equals AR equals ATC. This is known as the fair return price. Even though there are no economic profits, accounting profits can still be positive when there is an opportunity cost present. This graph shows the fair return price, PFR, and quantity, QFR. Total revenue maximization. The monopolist will maximize total revenue at a level of output where marginal revenue equals zero. QTR. The price is above that point on the demand curve, PTR, and the price elasticity of demand equals 1. It's unit elastic. Price discrimination. If a monopolist practiced perfect price discrimination, profits would increase drastically as the area of consumer surplus would be eliminated. Each consumer would pay the highest price that he or she is willing to pay. The former consumer surplus becomes part of the economic profit, but society will get a more socially efficient level of output because MC would equal D. Well, that wraps up this noble economic review lesson. Head on over to mrmedico.info for a ton of free study resources. ASAP. Till next time. See ya!
So thank you once again. That was a great discussion regarding about monopoly in our applied economics. So let's go back to our slide. So in your handouts or PDF files, um, we have activities, activity one. So I'm just referring you to answer activity one. So for week nine, we have explained the concept of market. We had also described different market structures and its roles in giving fair market price. Also give examples of products existing under different market structures and perform computations for profit and total revenue under each market structure. So for activity one, answer only identification. So thank you once again, everyone, and God bless.